world is complex. Every product has a story, where it comes from, how it gets to you, and where it goes after. That story is more complicated than whether a product has a green label or not. From common everyday items to manufactured products, most commodities we use come from lengthy supply chains, each with interconnected pathways that create part of those products' life cycles. Each input along those pathways can ultimately affect intricate environmental and social systems. Knowing the potential impacts embodied in a product based on ingredients and environmental resources used, and the societal and human health repercussions, is integral in making educated decisions about what products you ultimately buy and use.
Green building initiatives are changing. They require greater transparency in place of single attribute declarations. In the architecture and design industry, this is evident with the changes implemented in LEED v4 and other green building certifications.
So LEED is a green building rating system that was developed by the USGBC, or the United States Green Building Council, and LEED stands for Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design. Over the past few decades, LEED and the USGBC has really grown green building into not only a movement, but a advocacy and management tool that is making for a better built environment. The benefit of having this transparency is that we now are obtaining vast amounts of data on products, and we're able to help and encourage the manufacturing community and also the architecture and design community understand how to reduce product impacts throughout the life cycle. Without that fundamental data, it's very difficult to see where your baseline is. But now that we're starting to obtain it in a publicly available way, we can use that to further reduce and optimize products in the built environment.
The purpose of this transparency initiative is to help our designers have access to better information to make better choices. But I think there's a larger purpose in the transparency initiative, which is to put the responsibility where it belongs, with the people that create the things that we choose from.
Over the next few minutes, we will provide an understanding of a life cycle analysis, explain representative impacts of choices along a life cycle path, dig into elements of reading and using environmental product declarations, or EPDs, and other transparency documents, and shed some light on the benefits of transparency in the marketplace. First, let's start with a life cycle of something as easy as pie: apple pie. So where did this apple pie come from? Sure, it came from an apple, but to understand where it really came from, you have to trace it back to see all the impacts of each step in between. Back through the bakery to see if it was produced en masse, or baked just for you. What ingredients might have been added? Then trace it back to the processing plant where the fruit was cleaned, other waste was produced, and possibly made into other products like applesauce. Back through the distribution chain to see how far it was shipped and how much oil was used to get it to you, and even back further to see how it was picked. You probably want to go back even further before it was an apple to see how the land was prepared and what fertilizers and pesticides were added. To really understand where an apple pie comes from, you need to know more than whether it was homemade or not. One simple label just isn't enough. As you can see, there's more to an apple pie than meets the eye. There are inputs and impacts all along the entire path from seed to consumption. This is the same with every other product that we consume every day. Wouldn't it be great if that hidden history of products were made available?
Lifecycle analyses are really a great way to discover the hidden history of products.
That process includes lifecycle inventory, or LCI, the quantification of all ingredients and inputs used to make a product, which is then used to conduct a lifecycle analysis, or LCA, the scientific modeling of those inputs to predict potential environmental impacts. That extensive life cycle analysis report is then distilled to create an Environmental Product Declaration, or EPD, an executive summary of the LCA. Other processes and documents exist to make materials more transparent. Among these other documents, we will briefly discuss health product declarations. HPDs catalog products, ingredients, and known or suspected hazards associated with those ingredients.
Much of the information needed to understand a product's environmental footprint will be found in EPDs themselves. Specific terminology is used in EPDs to define potential impacts.
Here are some of those terms with definitions to help provide a solid understanding of what these documents tell us. Global warming potential, a measure of potential climate change contribution caused by greenhouse gases emitted. expressed in terms of carbon dioxide equivalent units. Eutrophication, a measure of pollutants such as phosphates that damage aquatic environments by acting as excessive nutrients. Abiotic depletion, the consumption of non-renewable resources such as fossil fuels, metals, and minerals. Ozone depletion, a measure of potential damage to the Earth's beneficial stratospheric ozone layer. Photochemical ozone creation, a measure of potential formation of harmful ground-level or tropospheric ozone, a component of photochemical smog. Acidification potential, a measure of potential to contribute to acid rain which damages water, soil, plants, animals, and property. In addition to those potential environmental impacts, there are human health and social equity issues to be considered in every product's life path. In tracing back that apple, we could look at the labor conditions of farm workers, or the possible health effects of consuming pesticide residues, among many other possible impacts. Life cycle analyses may not model or predict all of these important considerations. However, manufacturers may voluntarily report their individual commitments to human health and social fairness in HPDs or in the additional information pages on the EPD.
In the previous version, LEED 2009, the emphasis was really on looking at products through the lens of a single attribute. So what is the recycled content of a product? What is the regionality of a product? Is it sourced within 500 miles, for example? That thinking has shifted to more of a life cycle viewpoint. And now with LEED v4, we're looking at products from a life cycle lens, focusing on transparency, disclosure, and optimization.
Material disclosures are transparency documents that give a potential footprint preview for materials to be used in the built environment. Two common such documents we've already mentioned are Environmental Product Declarations, or EPDs, and Health Product Declarations, or HPDs.
The EPD is a comprehensive summary of a life cycle analysis of a specific product and gives a preview of the potential environmental impacts in a quantified manner based on scientific modeling.
Oftentimes, it also includes additional information, like information on the corporate sustainability practices of the organization, or additional environmental certification information, or volatile organic compound certification information.
Product Category Rules, or PCRs, govern the way an EPD is created. They will dictate what is ultimately reported in an EPD and are established to help ensure that like-kind products are studied in a consistent way. For example, all manufacturers of carpeting might follow the same PCR, whereas concrete manufacturers will follow a different PCR, as carpeting and concrete have very different life cycles that require different modeling and reporting.
So if a manufacturer is creating an EPD, they first must choose a product category rule, create the life cycle assessment or conduct the life cycle assessment following that specific product category rule, and then from there, create the EPD documentation following the product category rule as well. This is a little bit different than just conducting a life cycle assessment, because you can still do a life cycle assessment study without a product category rule. It just won't necessarily give you an environmental product declaration in the end. And this is actually why you see differences in the environmental product declaration credit in the LEED v4 rating system. The life cycle assessment can contribute to 1/4 of a point, whereas a full environmental product declaration contributes to a full credit.
Because points are awarded to products that have EPDs, architects and designers are actually still completely free to choose products that work best in each material application while still having a better understanding of what goes into those products from an environmental standpoint. For manufacturers, this is really great as well. It allows us to really study our products, look at where we can improve them, and have the time to improve them. If the ultimate goal is really healthier and less impactful buildings, then this is a much better way to achieve it than looking at single attributes of products like we used to do.
What an EPD doesn't tell you is if a product is green or not. It's not a multi-attribute type 1 label like a Green Seal logo or an Eco logo, for example. It doesn't allow you to just say, okay, we have an environmental product declaration and therefore this product is green. It is simply a report of the environmental impacts associated with that product throughout its life cycle.
Many products have their largest impacts along their life cycle from the extraction, manufacturing, and disposal stages of their life. So if we can really plan in advance to avoid premature disposal by choosing the proper materials for the application, we're going to lower the overall impact of the entire life cycle of the project itself. That's really important. We really want to ask questions like, is this material the right one? Does it have the right performance characteristics? Does it have the right durability characteristics? Can I recycle it at its end of life? Or what's going to happen to this when I'm done with it? In addition to the environmental impacts that a product may have as disclosed in an environmental product declarations, there's also hazards that can be associated with materials to the occupants of a building. When we want to look at that, there's another document type that can be really helpful in evaluating that. It's called the Health Product Declaration, or HPD.
This is a standardized reporting format for ingredients and associated hazards that was developed by the Health Product Declaration Collaborative. What one will typically see in an HPD is slightly similar to an EPD at the beginning. You have the product name, a description of the product, but where the difference lies is that the Environmental Product Declaration discloses associated environmental impacts like carbon footprint or embodied energy, whereas the HPD discloses associated ingredients of the product as well as hazards that tie back to those ingredients.
HPDs and EPDs both offer a higher level of transparency that enable more informed decisions. Understanding of a product's life history and potential environmental and health impacts are made easier with these material disclosures. For instance, in an EPD, you might see how the percentage of recycled content affects the global warming potential of a product, while then screening that same product's ingredients for possible health hazards by reviewing its HPD. In addition to your consideration of a product's environmental and health implications, these documents can also allow for a more holistic consideration of a manufacturer's commitment to sustainability, such as social equity, carbon neutrality, waste elimination, and healthy communities. Oftentimes, these additional important commitments cannot be quantified in EPDs or HPDs, even though they might contribute significantly to a product's overall sustainability. Using our apple example, the benefits of organic growing, such as protection of honeybees or the health of orchard workers by avoiding pesticides, might not be quantified in these reports. However, these are things you can feel great about when purchasing from a responsible producer. As a consumer, you have the power of choice.
An environmental product declaration, it's really about tracing it back and looking at the potential impacts and the resources that were used to create a product. The health product declaration, on the other hand, takes a look at that final product and says, is this going to be potentially a health hazard for the occupants of a building?
An EPD can vary from program operator to program operator. Typically, it's about a 10 to 15 page document. Sometimes you'll see a 2-page summary associated with the EPD, but there's always an underlying environmental product declaration that's ISO 14025 compliant that is accompanying that document.
Here's an example of an EPD. This one will help set the stage for viewing and using these reports, even though every EPD is different. Here we see a photo, general description of a product, and in this particular one, we also see a summary of potential impacts right up front. Here, the standards under which the EPD was developed and the name of the third-party verifier are listed. This information is important because third-party verification and conformance to certain standards is required to have maximum value given to that product under LEED v4. This is an optional section for the manufacturer where environmental policies and initiatives are listed. In addition, manufacturers have the choice to show their affiliations and certifications. This could be important to you if you're interested in the overall sustainability of the company and not just the individual product, which, as we suggested before, might have significant real-world implications in your choice of products. The next several pages include basic product information, specifications, and other physical and performance properties. Here we get into the product ingredients. This is one of the similarities that you will see when you look at the Health Product Declaration, or HPD. On these 3 pages, you'll find the definitions of acronyms used in the document, the representation of the potential environmental impacts associated with this product, and visuals and graphs of the actual study results. In this section, you might find interpretations and highlights of the data. For example, in this one we see the reduction of global warming potential and other environmental impacts of this product because it incorporates a high percentage of recycled content. Finally, here you'll find reference and contact information. Sometimes the manufacturer has someone on staff who can help walk you through the EPD if you have further questions.
Another leading form of transparency documentation is the Health Product Declaration, or HPD, which looks at the contents of a product with a focus on human health.
What one will typically see in an HPD is slightly similar to an EPD at the beginning. You have the product name, a description of the product, but where the difference lies is that the Environmental Product Declaration discloses associated environmental impacts like carbon footprint or embodied energy, whereas the HPD discloses associated ingredients of the product as well as hazards that tie back to those ingredients.
HPDs list ingredients and their known or suspected health impacts with no attempt to model them. They're more of a disclosure of possible health hazards. Often these documents are self-reported by the manufacturer and not verified by a third party.
What I appreciate is the comprehensive nature of the documentation, that we're looking at the impact on human health and well-being, not just the impact on the environment.
These documents offer an incredible amount of empowering information. To architects and designers, transparency disclosures offer a powerful set of tools to meet their project's performance, aesthetic, environmental, and health requirements to lead to a better built environment. To manufacturers, these reports offer a detailed look at where environmental and health impacts derive, and therefore illuminate areas where improvements in supply chain, resource inputs, or processes might have the most benefit in terms of reducing impact. To building owners and occupants, EPDs and HPDs offer value in the knowledge that their spaces are healthy in multiple environmental and human health attributes. On another practical note, projects aiming to have green building certifications under LEED v4, Green Globes, or Living Building Challenge will also benefit from using products that have appropriate transparency documents available.
As a designer, you think in systems every day. If you change one parameter of your design, it affects another area of your building. Or if you choose a color for an interior, you're going to want to ensure that that color scheme either matches or informs something else you're doing within the project. Material specification should be thought of in the same way. If you're specifying material for, say, high recycled content, then you may have to compromise on another area or another facet that is in your repertoire for understanding if a product is more sustainable or not. It's no longer about what's green or what's sustainable. It's about what truly is valuable to you and how do you match the data and the indicators associated with products to those values so that you can meet your clients' needs and ensure that you are having a more sustainable procurement and purchasing practice within your organization.
Everything is interconnected. There are thousands of decisions that go into each design of built environments, each of which will have a potential impact, externally on the environment outside and internally on the health of the people inside. Transparency in manufacturing does more than just contribute to LEED or other systems credits. It allows you as the architect and designer to see that you're designing more than just a space, more than a building. You're designing places in which health can thrive, both for the people that inhabit those spaces as well as for the world at large.